But what's interesting is that if a Democrat had said anything like that, whoa, I mean, they would be called an anti-Semite, period.
100%.
JD Vance stood in the White House press room yesterday and said some things that if a Democrat would have said it, you would have seen the right losing their absolute freaking minds. And on this clip within Abby Phillip's and CNN's Newsnight, we're going to see Abby Phillip say the quiet part out loud. Let's get into it.
Tonight, as a rift emerges between the U.S. and Israel over Trump's Iran deal, JD Vance is lashing out, responding to reporting that Trump's Iran agreement with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu took him by surprise, and it sent him fuming. JD Vance had a warning for critics of the deal in Israel.
You've seen people within Bibi's cabinet who have come out and attacked the deal, and in some ways very personally attacked the President of the United States. And I guess my message to them would be twofold. Number one, Donald J. Trump is the only head of state in the entire world who is sympathetic to the nation of Israel at this moment in time. And he happens to be the head of state of the world's superpower. If I was in the cabinet of the Israeli government, I might not be attacking the only powerful ally that I have anywhere left in the entire world. Anybody in Israel who thinks their biggest problem is the President of the United States needs to wake up and smell the reality of the situation that country is in.
I have to say, I did not have on my bingo card JD Vance being the attack dog against Israel for this administration. What do you think is going on?
Yeah, this was quite the week for JD Vance, making a lot of headlines. He's a very skilled politician, and he's giving voice to a certain faction on the right who are now blaming Israel for getting America into the war. And I think to an extent that's kind of a straw man, but that is a very vocal portion of the right. I think our interests are far more aligned. We've always known that they would diverge at some point, and evidently this is the point that JD Vance thinks they diverge. But I am very sensitive because they are on the front lines dealing with the outcome of this. There's already a report that Iran is promising Hezbollah funds, and they're going to be the ones who are dealing with that far more than we are. So I understand that Israel is scared and alarmed, and I think it's very reasonable that they would feel that way.
Yeah, to your point, I mean, according to the polling, support for Israel has only decreased in the last couple of years. Now, 57% of lean GOPers or GOPers have an unfavorable view of Israel. That's up from 35% in 2022. This is sort of like the Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly view of the world. And it's almost as if JD Vance's sense is that Trump is giving him a little bit of space because Trump is a little annoyed with Netanyahu. And so that gives him some space to sort of align himself with that pocket of MAGA. But what's interesting is that if a Democrat had said anything like that, whoa, I mean, they would be called an anti-Semite, period.
100%.
Well, I don't know if there's anything anti-Semitic about what was said, right?
Yeah,
I
they'd
mean,
just be called anti-Semitic.
I'm not saying it's anti-Semitic.
Would be saying that is
like I'm rubber, your glue kind of stuff.
To be clear,
if Jennings were here,
but
he would say that.
it's an important point. To be clear,
Is he?
I am not saying that it is anti-Semitic, but I am saying that for at least the last several years, any critique of Israel, its conduct in wars in Gaza, in Lebanon, how it conducts itself in the region in general has been Republicans have accused Democrats of being anti-Semitic for pointing any of those things out.
Yeah, I think it's very hard to make those kind of generalizations, Abby. I think at the end of the day, this at least puts to rest arguments that the president and this administration are just pawns of Israel, and it's really Bibi that's running the show, because we've certainly heard plenty of that nonsense.
That's just what Mike Johnson said.
Well, is he here to defend himself?
Well, that's what Mike Johnson said. I mean, that's what he said the day after this whole thing got started.
Listen, I've thought that was a ridiculous remark to begin with. And this is Trump being a deal maker. Bibi and Israel were in the way to get to this MOU. They were not invited to the table. That got Netanyahu pretty upset to the point that, from certainly the sources I have in D.C., there have been some pretty heated communiques between the two leaders. And I think a line had to be drawn in the sand. They will be brought back into the fold during these 60 days. I would be shocked if Israel and their concerns and considerations were left out completely of the negotiation of a final deal. Once again, this is an MOU, a memorandum of understanding. It is not a final deal. It's not.
There are so many bear traps here. You have many
I can
problems,
give you a few more if you want.
political problems that just unfolded in just what JD Vance said and the dialogue we're having here. Using the terms, we're the only one, the only powerful ally, the only option you have. Obviously, that could fracture international relationships at a time when you might want to be building some consensus. That's one possible bear trap. Lydia makes a point, and I subscribe to it, that a portion of the right wanted to hear this. This is not the time on a calendar to talk about portions of your political party. You're less than 140 days out from an election, and you are building in fractures inside your own party. And respectfully, there are very endangered incumbent Republicans who need to have this unifying moment.
It's not unless you're running for president, which is what JD Vance is doing. I mean, that's why this is so interesting, is because this is not just the vice president. It's also the vice president who wants to be president, who has to build something of his own MAGA base. And then he goes even further in this interview with the New York Times, where he basically suggests that Israel is trying to kill its way out of problems. Listen.
I don't think Bibi himself has actually criticized the deal, because I think he's maybe a little bit more familiar with the details of what's in it. But yeah, you've seen people in their system, Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, who've attacked the deal. And I guess my response to them would be, what is your exact proposal? And, you know, you're a country of 9 million people. You can't just kill your way out of solving every single national security problem that you have.
Honestly, I think there are a lot of Republicans who would say, actually, yes, they can. That has been really the policy that many Republicans have, which is that Israel has a right to kill who they need to kill in order to maintain safety and security of their borders.
Yeah, I think absolutely Republicans would agree with that. And also, where was this judgment from JD Vance before this war even started? It seems like this is a sort of new thing, and I agree that it sounds like JD Vance is running for president and is potentially facing a primary and now has to kind of figure out what his space is in the MAGA world in order to make a case to get through a Republican primary. But at the end of the day, I think that what Trump has done throughout this whole term is that he does not care who our allies are. And it seems like JD Vance is sort of taking that on as well, where they kind of they don't make friends, and it ends up hurting them moving forward.
Do you think that it will work? If it works for Trump, would it work for Vance?
I'm not sure it works for Vance at this point. Also, I mean, Donald Trump, Donald Trump he is not running for president. He does not care. He does not care about the political implications of any decision, including the midterms. He does not care about any of that. JD Vance has an entire political career. He is young. He is someone, if he does not run for president this time around, he will run for president next time around. And I think that he is the face of this war now.
I just think that it's very interesting, because I've sat at this table so many times and we keep hearing, oh, Trump doesn't care about affordability. I think he cares a lot. And obviously he was negotiating a deal, but even just in the last day, he said, look, I don't want to be responsible for depression. I think he's extremely aware, and I think that's why he made this deal, is because he recognized his base was growing weary with the war, and that's what pushed him.
Yeah, I guess. Can I just say, okay, yes, you just said what I was going to say.
Sorry.
I do think there might be a difference, right, between I believe that there is an affordability problem, and I don't want to have the legacy of Herbert Hoover. In Trump's mind, those are not the same thing, and that's a real distinction. He does care about how the history books write about him, not so much what the fate of Republicans are going to be in November when they're facing the voters at the polls. Former President Barack Obama.
So, what's interesting is, and of lately, I'm very critical of Abby, because sometimes she really frustrates me in the way that she handles the show. But I'm glad that she said what it is that she said, because let's be real, if a Democrat had said what JD Vance had said, Mark Levin, Tucker Carlson, Lindsey Graham, all of these pro-Israel talking heads on the right, they would be losing their absolute minds. JD Vance stood in the White House yesterday and said Israel is attacking the only powerful ally he has left on earth. And no one called him an anti-Semite. No one did. If you say those exact words as a Democrat, all of the names that it is that I just spoke about, they would be deeming you a Jew hater before you've even left the podium. Now, what's interesting is this. When Rashida Tlaib says American weapons shouldn't fund civilian deaths, it's classed as anti-Semitism. But when JD Vance says 2/3 of Israel's weapons are paid by US taxpayers, it's tough love, and no one's calling him an anti-Semite. And this is what the problem is. The right literally spent the last decade calling any criticism of Benjamin Netanyahu anti-Semitic, and now their own VP is calling his government ungrateful and isolated on international TV, and I haven't heard a whisper of the word anti-Semite or anti-Semitic. It's interesting, and what that tells you is this: anti-Semitism was never the real concern on the right. They just utilized it as a club to beat Democrats with, and the second that the GOP need to swing that same club at Israel, they put it back in the drawer and say absolutely nothing. Let me know your guys' thoughts on this exchange in the comment section below.